Hello, students of Johnson University's Foundations in Theology class. This is your instructor, Dr. David Russell Mosley. I wanted to bring up something that I've been seeing a lot in your discussion posts, not just in the one on Jesus Humanity, but in all of them. And that I've seen in several of your papers, particularly this paper on the biblical views of sin. And that is this notion that at the end of the day, these questions are inconsequential. At the end of the day, these things don't matter, because what matters is Jesus. And that's true. At the end of the day, what does matter is Jesus. But we have to agree that at the end of the day, what matters is Jesus needs qualifiers. Which Jesus? Is it the historical Jesus, the Jesus who only says things that aren't too Christian but also not too Jewish? You know, is it the Mormon Jesus whose father in heaven was actually just another human being who ascended to becoming divine, and whose brother was the Archangel Michael, I think? Is it the Aryan Jesus who was the first creature created by God, preeminent amongst creatures? Is it the Nestorian Jesus who was a human person who at his baptism or at some point in his human life was imbued with divinity so that we have two separate beings? These things are very important. And of course, it's obvious when I start putting it in the context of Jesus. But we have to remember that all of these other things are tied to our understanding of Jesus as well. So for instance, in the last video, I talked about Pelagius' views of sin and grace and how Jesus for Pelagius doesn't have to be God. Jesus for Pelagius can just be a perfect human being. That matters. His view on sin matters. What we think about sin matters. What we think about ourselves in our sinfulness matters. Original sin is one thing, but, what if we took that to the point where we just simply said human beings are created evil? Like, what if we said that just being created means being evil? That's bad. That flies in the face of Genesis 1. So we have to, these things that we're discussing in this class, it can sometimes maybe feel like they're up here kind of stuff. They're very esoteric, they're very theoretical. We can never come to a complete conclusion on them. But actually they're very practical because they affect how we think about God, how we think about our relationship to God, how we think about our relationship to others. One of the key reasons that theologians like myself have a tendency not to like, say, Calvinism, is this notion that it feels like it can absolve us of all responsibility. I don't need to preach or evangelize because God's already elected who's going to be saved and who isn't. And even if he elected to do so through me, my not doing so can't keep that person from being saved. Because it's about God's election, not about human actions. So what's the point? What's the point in evangelizing? What's the point in doing anything? Either I'm saved or I'm not. Why actively try to do good? I'll either just do it because God makes me, or I won't because he didn't. So these things matter. These things matter. Theology is so immensely important. And that's roughly what your first paper was about. Theology is the means by which we understand, that we kind of try to categorize and begin to understand as much as we can who God is and our relationship to him. And yes, it's hard. Yes, we will never come to completely concrete answers to every question. But that doesn't mean that we should stop trying. It doesn't mean that we should just throw our hands up and say, look, we're never going to understand this anyway. We're never going to know, or at least we're never going to know until we're resurrected. So why try now? Why not just let me love Jesus and get on with my life? But it doesn't work that way. Christianity doesn't work that way. I mean, read the New Testament. Read the letters of Paul. Read the letters of Peter, who makes it abundantly clear that we are called to have knowledge of God and that we're called to be ready to answer people when they have questions. We're called to have a deep, or as deep as you can as an individual, understanding of theology. Now, it's true. Not all of you in this class are called to have the same level of knowledge about theology as, say, I am. And that's just on the academic level. There's another level of theology that is spiritual, in the sense that it's about prayer, it's about holiness. But even that has a relationship to the academic level. And not all of you are called to the same academic level that I have been called to. Okay? You just haven't. Maybe some of you have, and that's excellent, and I want to encourage you in that. But maybe some of you haven't, and that's okay. But it doesn't mean that you get to just stay at whatever level of knowledge you had when you entered this class, or whatever level of knowledge you had when you became a Christian. That's not how Christianity works. It's not how the faith works. The faith is a journey. And journey requires progress. We are journeying from where we are now to God. Right? And that means that we have to progress. We have to move forward on that journey. Otherwise, we aren't journeying. And part of that includes deeper theological reflection. I highly recommend that you check out some of the sermons that were preached by ancient and medieval theologians, because many of you may find them way above your heads. Some of them are still above my head. And we have to remember, they preached these sermons in church. This is, when people went to church, these are the sermons they heard. And we need to remember that. And yeah, some people didn't understand what was said in the sermon. And that's why there are other parts of the service. But we have to engage. We can't just throw up our hands and say, look, this is too difficult. We're never going to get a complete answer to this. So let's just give it up and love Jesus. Part of loving Jesus is working through these issues. Okay. That's all I wanted to say. God bless. I'll see you guys next time.